Joining me now to discuss the fallout is Amber Phillips, political reporter for The Washington Post. Amber, Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted today, "I hope America's adversaries are watching and now understand there's a new sheriff in town." So what's the message that President Trump is sending?
Yeah, well, the message President Trump is sending that he's going to bomb whatever country or whatever group that he thinks needs to be bombed with very, very little warning. I will say that GOP hawks like Lindsey Graham, Senator John McCain, Marco Rubio, among them, are a huge fan of this. Just a couple weeks ago, they were accusing Trump of backing off too much in places like Syria and giving Syrians president incentive to gas his own people. Now you have tweets like that from Lindsey Graham. They're cheering their president on.
Yeah, I mean, some of the military actions do counter what candidate Trump said. You just mentioned Syria. So is he running the risk, basically, of angering that sort of America first base?
Yeah, there's always a risk with that. It's tough to tell whether they are actually going to be angry. He did say during the campaign he wants to bomb the heck out of ISIS. I think he said another word. He didn't mention anything about Syria, but a Washington Post ABC News poll this week showed that 86% of Republicans approved of him bombing Syria, a slim majority of Americans overall. It could be one of the situations where Donald Trump's base is more focused on the man than his issues. He's always been a shifting ideological kind of guy.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard that throughout the week. We've heard that from a lot of people saying this is really who he is, somebody who shifts that opinion so quickly. Senator McConnell attributed the recent policy reversals, and not just on foreign policy, obviously some economic policy as well, to learning on the job. So is that what this is, or is there more to it?
Well, that's what his top aides say. My White House colleagues here at the Washington Post talked to a bunch of people about that, about how Trump has just flipped on 5, 6 positions this week. And his top aides say, you know what? He's new to politics. He's new to governing. He's new to this whole all the issues that he's faced with on a daily basis. Why can't he change his mind after he learns more about it? Yeah. Trump famously said at the beginning he didn't read any briefing books, but talking to people certainly seems to change his mind.
Yeah, it raises the question, too, who has President Trump's ear when it comes to foreign policy, let's say?
Right. Yeah, we don't know. This week, I'm not sure the president knows, to be honest. He had said, I think it was in the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal this week, that, he day by day is trying to figure out who his closest advisors are and who to listen to. I'm not sure the president knows. I will point out that I just noticed and just wrote a story that he's changed some major positions after talking to people on the opposite side of that position.
Right.
China, after talking to the Chinese president, is no longer a currency manipulator. NATO is good after he talked to NATO. So I just think he's trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and we know there's a Washington Post article about Gary Cohn, the former Goldman Sachs president, sort of pushing economic policy.
Right.
And so people are wondering, where does Steve Bannon fit in now in all of this?
Right. Yeah, we don't know. 1 week does not a presidency make, but this week is certainly evidence that President Trump has moved more toward the Wall Street guys, the Gary Cohns, the Jared Kushners in his camp, and away from the Steve Bannon types. He, of course, publicly said in an interview, "Oh yeah, Steve's a guy who works for me this week." So this week he doesn't seem too fond of that populist sentiment. But that is President Trump himself. Even before he ran for president, he had this kind of populist vibe, this kind of non-interventionist vibe. And I don't know that that's going to change in 1 week, but right now it is.
It certainly is. And Democrats, if we look back at foreign policy, they've been calling for congressional scrutiny over North Korea and the strikes in Syria. Yep. Can they use President Trump's foreign policy to their own advantage if you say look ahead to 2018?
Right. Yeah, we'll see. Americans don't tend to vote based on foreign policy unless we're in a war, and that's a whole different ballgame. I will point out one interesting stat, and that's that Republicans, as I mentioned, largely approve of President Trump's strike in Syria. Well, in 2013, when President Obama was considering one, the Washington Post found that Republicans largely didn't approve of this strike. So this could be yet another situation where Americans are just viewing everything through their lens of politics.
Right.
And then I'm not sure how many independents or, Republicans who are wary of Trump they can win over by talking about foreign policy.
You had an article recently, and it was titled, "Do Senate Republicans Have a Trump Recruiting Problem?" Meaning it was sort of looking at the numbers versus President Trump in the battle for the Senate in 2018. So what did you discover from all of this?
Yeah, well, in 2018, Senate Democrats should, if you just, all things being equal, get slaughtered at the polls. They have 25 seats they have to defend. 10 of those are in states that Trump won. 5 of those are in states Trump won by double digits, like 20, 30, 40 points. But in some of these states, some top-name Republicans, mostly lawmakers in the House, have declined to challenge these vulnerable Senate Democrats. And when you combine that with some congressional special elections in Kansas and Georgia that Republicans are fretting about, you have to wonder, is Trump's broader unpopularity, and right now 30-40% of America is about all that approves of him, is that going to drag down Republicans in the midterms next year?
Yeah, we saw in Kansas the Republicans, maintaining there, and we'll see what happens in Georgia. I believe it's next week or the week after. Amber Phillips in Washington, thank you very much.
Thank you.